Welcome to the Irish NFL Show's Week 11 live preview and game picks show brought to you by QuimBet. Thanks to all of you who are joining us while Ireland are putting Portugal to the sword in the World Cup qualifier there live on the other channel. Ronaldo's just been sent off. That one's done, so stay with us. Tell Joxer to pack the jump leads for the van. We're back, baby. Ole, 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 and all the way to the World Cup. All we need to do is beat Hungary now, and it's a done deal. Right, in the NFL, we have 15 games this weekend. Just two teams, the Colts and the Saints, are on a bye. Week 11 kicks off tonight, of course, with an AFC East clash between the Jets and the Patriots from Foxborough. You can check out our preview podcast of that one. Shane caught up with Chris Mason from Mass Live News to get the full lowdown both on the game and on the Patriots season to date as they look to add to their 7-game winning streak. Sunday's action gets underway at 2:30 in the afternoon in Madrid as the Commanders take on the Dolphins. Dolphins 2.5-point favourites in that one. Brian and I will be at the Bernabeu. Dolphins showed up last week in a big way, Shane, and put a beat down on the Bills, unexpectedly so. Can they now repeat the performance in Madrid?
Well, as Pablo Picasso, the great Spanish artist, once said, it takes a long time to become young. And that's definitely the way that this Miami offense seems to be developing over the course of the season. It's unusual, considering, for so much of it, they've been turgid, they've been without a plan. But last week against the Bills, the run game was solid. Tua was able to throw deep balls. He was still able to throw a couple of interceptions, in fairness to him. But what I find really, really intriguing about this is actually the way both of these head coaches, they get the situations they're both in. Because obviously Mike McDaniel, the confidence in him is something that we've questioned very much on the show, rightly so, I think, for many reasons. But the team inside the locker room, but also in terms of the ownership, seem to at least be putting some sort of faith in him, and that he wasn't cut down, and at the same time at the front office was cut down. That front office being gutted over the last couple of weeks. And it seems that the players are playing for McDaniel, so much so that McDaniel isn't confident enough to get into his Bentley and drive around and taunt Buffalo Bills fans in Miami Beach last week. And then on the Commander side of things, Dan Quinn, you have to remember, he's a defensive head coach. He's managing a defense who, in the last couple of weeks, they've lost the last 4 games by over 20 points. Really on a bad rush of form. Their rush defense is bad. They're the 4th most in missed tackles against the run. They give up a lot of explosive runs. But for the first week this week, I'm pretty sure Dan Quinn is back doing play calls. So they are obviously doing a big change in approach for this. And both of these teams have been in Madrid since Tuesday as well. So I think preparation won't be a problem, unlike for some teams who come over to Europe. So I think it's a really intriguing matchup. I'm going for the Dolphins here, though, I guess, firstly, because I don't believe that this Washington defense can fix their really, really leaky problems as quickly as I think that Dan Quinn is probably trying to fix them, to try and at least get some sort of shape back on their season. Because even though Jaden Daniels has been injured, is that defense that has really, really been disappointing, especially against Detroit last week. But secondly, if you actually look at what Miami's strengths are, their strengths are offensively are in 2 players, Devon Achane and Jayden Waddle, particularly Achane and how he's using both the run game and the pass game. And that he just matches up well with the weaknesses that Washington have in terms of being explosive, but also being able to rush in. So look, I think as much as I had a really good time in Berlin last week in a fantastic stadium, I'm jealous of you guys being able to experience the Bernabeu. I've seen so much of the build-up this week. The Spanish fans are really treating this as a special occasion that it is. That stadium is probably the best stadium in Europe, and it's going to be an amazing thing. And I think the Dolphins are going to try and bring some sort of home feel to what this occasion is. But I just think that they have more going for them right now than the Washington Commanders do, which is why I think the Dolphins will be able to find a way to win this game.
Shane, I feel like I've let down our audience with my lowbrow pop culture references, and when you've just completely upgraded it from cheap Will Ferrell one-liners to Pablo Picasso in one massive jump. So thank you for that. I'll try and maintain the standard, Kieran. Will it be Guernica for the Commanders, or will it be more like the old guitarist? Will they find a way to pick out a tune that takes them past the Dolphins?
Vamos Miami. I think I fully agree with Shane. I think it's going to be a win for the Dolphins. And last week, look, we finally saw the high-powered offense of the Dolphins and the suffocating defense, and there to me lies the frustration with Mike McDaniel. And I have to say, I really enjoyed listening to the AV Club, and you were called out by your fellow hosts there, Ben and Craig. Shane, there was a plot afoot. I think you were begging Miami to keep Mike McDaniel in situ, because as long as he's there, the Patriots have a chance to dominate the division. Because you know full well, as good as they've been, and they've got a run of form, they're still a 3-win team, and there's there are still issues in Miami. But to be fair, they have built up this momentum, and Achan and Waddle are an absolute powerhouse. Achan was fantastic last week, 22 carries for 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, and another 50 through the air. So, while Tua can throw, he throws a beautiful interception. I think I've heard that said about someone before. But he's getting the ball to the right guys, and he's putting up numbers in the in the positive category in the last few weeks. And on the other side of the ball, I think I still don't think I think last week was an outlier. I still don't think Miami are capable of going on any kind of a run or anything like that. But it's the Commanders and the trouble that they're in, and we've called it out a few times even before the season started. We think the failure in Washington was the reluctance to build on what they started last year. There's a difference between putting experience in the locker room and then backing that up with a little bit of youth and a little bit of energy, and they needed that. And notwithstanding that Lattimore is injured now, they've no they've no Jaden Daniels, they have no Terry McLaurin, and I don't think they have much of a chance in this weekend.
Brian and I will save our breaths to cool our porridge for the time being, because we will, of course, have a preview of that one from Madrid on Sunday from the Bernabeu, but we will make our picks. Brian, I'm going Commanders. How about you? No, Dolphins. What am I saying? Dolphins.
Oh, Genie Mac. Sorry, 1 point. Kieran saying they won't go on a run. I think they might, because they got the Saints next week and then they got the Jets the following week. I am going with the Dolphins. Chris Waddle went, and when he retired, and played in a over 60s football tournament in Spain for many a year. Connor, it's the Jalen Waddle show on Sunday. Dolphins.
Connor, I like the fact that you said all that Ireland have to do now is go and beat Hungary, as if that's just a formality as well. A foregone conclusion.
Yeah. There we go.
Green jersey here. I'm on the bandwagon again. Into the 6 o'clock window, where the Packers travel to MetLife to take on the Giants, who will be helmed by Jameis Winston this weekend. Brian Daboll out, of course, and Mike Kafka in as the interim head coach. Kieran, is this a get-right game for the Packers after the letdown of the Eagles?
Well, they had a get-right game against the Cardinals, and that didn't pan out too well. They had a get-right game against the Panthers, and that didn't end very well. So, how many get-right games in a season are you allowed? I don't know. Look, I listened to the lads on the AV Club again. And I can't disagree with much of what they were saying. I stayed up for this game the other night, the game the other night, and against the Eagles, and it was a hugely frustrating offensive display. Excellent defensive display. I mean, they're one of the top defenses in the league, and you can't fault that. But there is just something wrong with this offense at the moment. And in fairness, they're banged up. Look, give credit where it's due. They're missing Tucker Kraft. They're missing Jaden Reed. They're missing a whole host of receivers. And Elton Jenkins now going out on the offensive line is not going to help the situation either. But Craig on the AV Club the other day, actually, he had a great. I like the way he put it. He said that Matt LaFleur can't seem to get out of his own way, and there is it's. So I think one of you guys in the WhatsApp group could compare him to the coach on the water boy as well. It's like this guy with these great ideas that just can't get them out on paper at the moment, and he keeps calling the same plays over and over again. And there was a great example of them the other night on 4th and 1. They called they were in shotgun formation. The game was on the line. They had to have it. They started a yard short, and in shotgun they drove themselves back 5 yards. And in the run up to it, you could hear the Eagles. Defensive lineman calling out the play, and at that point you're kind of saying everyone could hear it. How is Jordan Love not either calling an audible or calling a timeout? And again, Matt LaFleur, he seems to be so obsessed with getting the right play. I said it last week.
Can I ask a question on this one, Kieran? You following it much more closely than me. It strikes me that it must have been very frustrating for an offensive coach of Matt LaFleur's standing for Aaron Rodgers to be constantly changing the play at the line of scrimmage. I wonder, has he over-indexed the other way and taken the power out of Jordan Love's hands to the detriment of the offense?
Yeah, but I mean, even if he wants to take the power out of his hands, he needs to take control of the game. Then in that situation, if he's not giving him the autonomy to to change it up, then he needs to call that timeout. That's simply what he needed to do. It didn't look right. And Josh Jacobs even said it. He said he was completely thrown by the Eagles defense. He thought about running. He changed his mindset about what way he was going to run. So it was so tentative. It was so nervy. And Jordan Love was like that all night. Even in the moment where he tried to get rid of the ball and he had a really, really sloppy fumble. Another key moment. And look, I know, we want to move forward. We're not here to review last week's game, but it's just something is not right. And the offense, LaFleur this week has come out and said he's backed himself up. He's not going to relieve himself of play calling duties, even though there's huge pressure on him to do that now. I see Matt Schneidman writing for the Athletic, and he's one of the key voices on the ground in terms of beat writers in Green Bay, and he's called out now the fact that Matt LaFleur is coaching for his job. It's not just the fans clamoring for this. There is a real momentum building behind it, that something is either going to have to improve dramatically or it's going to have to change very quickly. And he might find himself, he might find his seat heating up. And what, as a Packers fan going into this weekend, what gives you cause to be optimistic is the fact that the Giants have allowed 187 rush yards per game over the last 4. They've been one of the weaker rush defenses, and that tells you that Josh Jacobs should have an immense day this weekend. But again, LaFleur has been too predictable in his run play design. The other thing that I'm terrified of is the Jameis kick and the coaching kick as well that'll come after, off the back of the firing of Dayball. I mean, we've seen it so often, so many times. People are calling this a get right game, but I mean, the Packers have not performed offensively since week 1. They haven't gone out and proved that they could actually, put up massive numbers against anyone except the Cowboys, one of the worst defenses in the league. And so, yeah, I'm giving it to the Packers on the basis that, on paper, I mean, they really should. I mean, the Giants, how many injuries can they survive? I think if this was a full strength Giants team with Jackson Dart, I'd be hugely concerned. I'd be worried about whether we go and get any kind of result as a Packers fan. But just because by the nature of the injuries, I'm just going to edge it for the Packers.
Well, Brian, interim head coach at the helm for the Giants. Will this be the metamorphosis that they've been seeking, or will it be a Kafka-esque nightmare? Sorry, I'm just trying to match up to Shane's highbrow. Beautiful,
Connor. Now, ultimately, I think the Giants will fall short on Sunday, and I think it's to some of the points in which Kieran's alluded to at the back end there, which is just too many injuries to overcome offensively. Like Jackson Dart essentially was doing it all on his own last week, and okay, some players stepped up and made some big plays at crucial times, but I mean, they ran the life out of poor kid last week, which ultimately ended in the circus that we've dealt with over the course of the week. I would imagine the Giants defense might step up a bit better this week and play, and I don't think they're going to be in a position where they're going to throw away a game because I think the game will be secure. I think this strikes me as that 49ers game a couple of weeks ago. People were worried about the 49ers coming into MetLife a couple of weeks ago. It was full of 49ers fans. It was a comfortable day, and despite the Packers' troubles, and I find it hilarious in a way we've all feel our own teams have all the issues. Even teams that are having success is always a wrinkle that you'd like to fix. To listen to the press conference this week where Matt LaFleur was literally called out saying, are you coaching for your job? And he said, I'm coaching for my job in every single game, in which I do week to week, and that is the nature of the NFL. I think it's bizarre. If they want to get rid of him, he can rock up in MetLife anytime. I think he'd be forced on the list for the Giants. Yeah, Packers for me, I'm not going to buy into the interim piece. I think Jameis Winston will be Jameis Winston. We'll have some exciting plays, Connor, but ultimately we'll also have some interceptions that will lead to Packers winning the game.
And we'll have the best pre-match team talk to rally the troops from him, and the best post-match interview. Like Jameis, just give me 24/7 Jameis channel. Like, he is just good for the soul. We're big fans of Jameis here, and yeah, God bless.
He was good. He was good to us when we were over there as well, Connor.
Yeah, absolute star, lovely human being, and long may he continue to play football and to entertain us all as he does so on and off the pitch. Shane, what do you reckon? I've got Packers here.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the Packers, I guess giving out about Matt LaFleur, I think the lady protests too much. Methinks I'm happy to give LaFleur a little more rope. So I think the Packers are going to win this one. I'm going to win it easy.
In our next game, the Jags go back to the home comforts of Duval, where they take on the Chargers, hot off the press after beating the Steelers and upending them in the process of doing that. Chargers now at 7-3. This is a crucial one for both teams. Jags obviously don't want to lose touch further ground on the Colts in the South, whereas the Chargers are also playing on a weekend where the Chiefs travel to play the Broncos. If the Chiefs can do them a favor, the last thing they'll want to do is to have slipped up in a spot where they'll fully expect to beat the Jaguars. They're 2.5 point favorites on the road, I think justifiably so, given their 7-3 record, and particularly what they managed to do to the Steelers. I thought heading into that Pittsburgh game that we might see Justin Herbert continue to be under pressure, and we'd seen the Steelers defense show up in a big way to take down the Colts and end their winning streak. And we thought, okay, this is the Steelers team we can expect to see going forward. That's the pass rush that you'd expect them to bring to bear against the Chargers, and it didn't happen. Meanwhile, we saw the Chargers putting the heat on the Steelers, and we saw Khalil Mack coming back to life, showing us some veteran moves. They've still got such a high-powered offense as well. Kamani Vidal, Kieran, I know you're a big fan of his. He's come in and done great things in the absence of their marquee running back. Sorry, his name's gone out of my head. He's down with an injury. Marion Hampton, yeah, apologies. Quentin Johnson showing up big there. Lad McConkey, we're all a big fan of here. Such a strong week-to-week option. Brian, as you were saying, if you swapped Lad McConkey for DK Metcalf, I think the Steelers would take that deal any day of the week, given how the season's gone for those two respective players. I have been saying for some weeks since the Jags went hot at the start of the season, I didn't think their success was sustainable, and I thought they were going to be running into the mud at some point. They are now there at 5-4. They're still in touch, right? They're still, just outside the playoff picture. Winning the division is not, complete pipe dream for them if they can pick up a couple of wins. But I just don't see them being able to hold court here against the Chargers, who I think are in a much better spot. These teams seem to me to be trending in opposite directions, and I expect the Chargers to continue their winning streak in Jacksonville this weekend. Shane?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the injuries to Joe Alton, just the general sort of offensive line problems that the Chargers have, I think has gotten a lot of coverage, considering that Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater are both out. And look, there's no suggestion that they're still going to get better. Justin Herbert took 11 sacks in the last 2 weeks. But I think we can focus so much on how many sacks you take, but without actually realizing how much that actually affects teams in the run of play, or whether quarterbacks, if they're under pressure, are more likely to make mistakes. And I think Justin Herbert is improving at actually being able to play whilst under pressure. He's still being able to pass the ball well. He's still looking confident. He's still able to run an offense which consistently hits over 25 points a game. 25 against the Steelers, 27 against the Titans, 37 against the Vikings a couple of weeks ago. So there's no real reason to start panicking on that side of things. I think the Jaguars have more of a reason to look at themselves and think whether there really is something wrong here, because they've gone from leading the NFL in takeaways in the first 5 weeks, in the second 5 weeks being the 29th in terms of secondary pass coverage rate and only getting 2 interceptions. Their pass defense has completely dropped since they went to London and came back again. I think that has been one of the key differences between that sort of great momentum building victory that they managed to pull off against the Kansas City Chiefs and the lack of strong defensive performance they've had since. And another thing as well, yes, Travis Hunter is out for the season. That's going to affect the pass game. But actually, if you drill down and look at when the Jaguars win, if the Jaguars have a good day on run offense, they win. If they have a bad day on run offense, they don't win. They didn't have a good day on run offense against the Texans last week. Was that the reason they collapsed? Probably not. But there is that correlation is there for a reason. I've been saying for a while, as much as there's pressure on Trevor Lawrence, and it seems like that relationship between Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence doesn't look great after what happened last week. The run game, I think, is more important for Jacksonville. I think most people realize that if they could get it going, that gives them an option, that gives them a reason to go. And the Chargers are a mid-ranking run defense, but I'm fully confident that the Jags can bring the A-game run offenses they need to bring to this game. So I agree with you, Connor. I think the Chargers have got too much going for them in spite of their offensive line problems. I don't think they're going to let this game slip, despite the fact that they are flying coast to coast for an early kickoff in Florida. I don't really read into that particular too much. I think the Chargers are looking good for a win here.
Brian?
Yeah, Chargers, very impressed with their defense last Sunday night, something that they've kind of jumped around and started the season. Defense was good, kind of wavered for a while, got it back on track. Chargers for me.
Yeah, underrated secondary as well. Like that secondary is giving up the lowest quarterback rating, second lowest quarterback rating, I should say, in the league. Like underrated pass defense, and when they get it together on the front end, as we saw last weekend, they're dangerous. Kieran.
Yeah, no, Chargers. I think they're doing very, very well to keep pace in this division here, and I think this is a game that, again, Harbaugh has etched out the Chargers charging culture, and just as I say that now, it'll come flying back again this weekend. But no, I'll give Chargers the win this weekend.
Right, to Pittsburgh we go next, into Acrisure, where the Bengals travel to the Steelers for the return of a game that the Bengals won unexpectedly just a few weeks ago. Steelers looking to get revenge. We mentioned the Steelers as the erstwhile opponents of the Chargers, and big letdown for the Steelers as the Chargers took care of business against them. We thought, as we said, the Steelers coming off that morale-boosting win against the Colts, where they put the shackles on Daniel Jones and the Colts offense, that we were going to see a different Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Brene Brown's marble jar trust analogy, but the Steelers have no marbles in my jar right now. I'm back to where I was 2 years ago with them. I just cannot trust them from week to week. You do not know what you're going to get. No marbles for you. You need to start depositing marbles in the jar, Steelers. You can look that one up afterwards. It's worth the investment of your time. Trust me, if you're not already familiar with it. The Bengals showed up this Steelers defense and showed up some of the weaknesses that the Chargers in fact exploited last weekend in their victory. We saw those speedy receivers in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, the quick slants across the middle, Joe Flacco slicing and dicing them. We had then seen Mike Tomlin go against himself, drop into the two deep safety look, rotating Jalen Ramsey into the free safety slot and change up the scheme that had been exposed, to his credit, and it paid huge dividends against the Colts. So it was a bit of a surprise that they weren't able to repeat the trick against the Chargers. I don't, however, see them slipping up for a second time against the Bengals. It's hard to see what the Bengals are going to do here, or what motivation there is for them beyond not to totally embarrass themselves in the division. Coach playing for his job there. I think Zach Taylor very much, with the way this season has panned out. Steelers obviously very much still in the fight, still in the lead in the AFC North, and we're very much needing to get back on track. At 5.5 point favourites, I think they're well worth that punt. I expect them to cover. Brian.
Yeah, I agree with you. Conor. I think they'll roll the marbles, as you just said there, and win a home game, because whatever about their suspect form defensively on the road, and they've seemed to have got it right within reason throughout the course of the season at home. We touched on it a few weeks ago, the Colts game. It was interesting. Kieran made a point a couple of weeks ago. It was a game that everyone felt the Colts should win, but everyone had that sneaking feeling that the Steelers would win, and that's how it played out. And in this instance, I think they'll have had enough time to kind of address the issues in which they experienced on that Thursday night football game. Despite the loss, they were a glimmer away from winning that game with that late Rodgers touchdown and all the fiasco, people jumping on his back thereafter. But that was a huge game. I don't think we're going to see that type of game on Sunday. I think this is the problem with the Bengals, though. If they can shut this Bengals down or slow the offense down to a stage where they can put up enough points, which defense are you relying on Sunday, and which one do you trust more? Despite the frailties of the Steelers over the course of the season, the Bengals has been in free fall. It'd be interesting to see if they could address any of that during the bye week. But I still think Aaron Rodgers will come back and have a good game Sunday. I'll go with the Steelers. They really need this one. They really need it. We've got the Ravens right up behind them now, so they got to win. I'm going to go with the Steelers.
Yeah, we talked about how they had a 3-game lead. Now it's, as you say, it's right down to the wire in the AFC North. That seemed unthinkable a few weeks ago with the Ravens at 1-5. They're now riding a 3-game winning streak at 4-5, and Steelers only a game ahead of them. Shane.
I flipped a coin on this one to try and figure out what Pittsburgh Steelers would turn up. I figured if it landed on heads, then the Steelers that would get 5 turnovers would turn up, and it landed on heads. So for that reason, I'm picking the Steelers.
That's exactly the sort of deep database analysis and reportage that we're looking for, Shane. Showing your homework there. Kieran.
Yeah, another good hot take on the AV Club this week. Zach Taylor has the hottest seat in the league, and I think I agree. I think the Steelers get this win, and I'm a bit worried about. I'm going to have to throw out all my Will Ferrell quotes tonight, because this has gone way too highbrow for me. I'm going to have to dust off some Pavlov or Rousseau or something like that. I don't know. I'll have to go deep into the archives here for the rest of the show.
I thought you were going to drop a Will Ferrell quote in us there. You let us up the garden path and then you let us down. You're crazy, Kieran. I like you, but you're crazy. Panthers Falcons in the NFC South up next. Falcons are 3.5-point favourites at home, but these NFC South clashes have a bit of a reputation for going a little cray-cray, Shane. You're not quite sure which Panthers team are going to show up, and you're sure as hell not sure which Falcons team are going to show up.
No, and flipping coins wouldn't even tell you who turn up in these ones either. I think what's interesting to me is obviously I've had a good look at the Falcons the last couple of weeks. Obviously seen them play in Germany last week in person, and then the previous week sort of watching them live against the Pats. And what struck me about Michael Penix in particular is just how inaccurate he has been. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how it came across watching the Berlin game on TV, but he was 12 of 28 in Berlin. But even of those 12 that he completed, you could just tell that the wide receivers had to work a little bit too hard to try and make the catch. And then at what point then is in a couple of those plays, do they lose that extra second that means they can actually get yards after catch? And that has a knock-on effect to a lot of what that offense can do. I think they got lucky in some, well, not lucky, but I guess they got explosive in some key moments. They sort of kept them in that game. The fights back to the Colts were quite clearly the better performers. Playing against a Panthers team who, beat the Falcons 30-0 already this year. A Panthers team who were good enough to beat the Buffalo Bills and then completely just did not show up, especially defensively, against the New Orleans Saints last week. It's consistency is something which they're really struggling with. But the key for the Panthers isn't actually, I guess, defensive, is what they can do on the run game. Because if they manage to get the run game sorted pretty early on and have it established, it changes how Bryce Young plays. It changes what their running game can do. Because look, their defense has managed to hold their opponents to 18 points or less in 3 of the last 4. That's consistent enough, even though in some situations they might have lost things. In the red zone, if they let you get into the red zone, they're pretty good at actually keeping you out of the end zone. They're more vulnerable to explosive plays that happen sort of midfield around that. There's a lot of questions around Bryce Young, but I think I think they're learning to actually just lighten the load on him and just let Rico Dowdle do the job. And that offensive line that Carolina have is designed for good run play. Inside runs, outside runs, screen plays. That's what they're good at. And they keep running that strength. I think it will go well against the Falcons team who, let's be fair, had to fly all the way to Germany last week, played into overtime, had a 9-hour flight back. And even though they're playing at home, in Atlanta, I still think that they're not going to be focused enough, considering that last week they weren't focused when had a lot of inaccurate passes. The run game, especially Bijan Robinson, was not explosive at all. Neither was he the previous week. They were 0 for 8 on third down last week. I think, I just sense too much with the Falcons that was not sharp in the last couple of weeks, that I don't think would be sharpened enough in time for this game for me to think that the Panthers won't go in and try to find a way to win this against an opponent who, as they've already shown this year, they know well and can probably decode pretty well. I think I'm in the minority. The Falcons are our favorites here. Most of the money, I believe, is being picked on Atlanta. But I'm going for Carolina here. I think they just have a bit more going for them. That if they get that run game and let their offensive line do the job, they have a key advantage there, as opposed to the Falcons, who I just think are just, have gotten into this a habit of losing and a habit of losing control of key situations. And Michael Penix's inaccuracy is a key part of that.
Kieran, we talked the other week about how nobody's given Dave Canales the head coach of the year buzz, but he's quietly performed a minor miracle there in Carolina. And no, they haven't been consistent, but they have a winning record, and they're transformed from where they were 2 years ago, where they were almost a laughingstock in the NFL. Bryce Young was a bust, we were told, and this team was going nowhere fast.
Yeah, and the only criticism I'd have of Canales was when he chose not to dance with the one that brought him in taking the carries away from Rico Dowdle when Chuba Hubbard came back. But notwithstanding that, Dowdle is back on the horse clearly, and he's one of the best backs in the league. Two funny teams here, because the Panthers on paper are a team that I just wouldn't have got excited about them on paper before the season started. And as you said, I think good coaching, discipline play, and just I think maximizing their potential. I think they've got a record that flatters them now at 5-5, and I think most Panthers fans would have to be happy with that. And on the other side, you've got a Falcons team that have just as Kieran week to week calls them the Jots. they're one of these teams. I think you can't trust them to win, and I don't think you can trust them to lose either. If you want to bet against them, because they've got their highs are so high, and it's such a funny league because opinions and perspectives can change so quickly. It's not too long ago where we were calling Bijan Robinson one of the most complete players in the league and one of the most dependable players in the league, and he's cooled off. But I think this could be a game where the ground game on both sides could really flourish, because you're looking at a Falcons team that gave up 323 yards on the ground to Indianapolis. And so on one hand, Rico Dowdle is going to be licking his lips, and on the other hand, the Panthers gave up 216 not so long ago to James Cook. So this could be a real throwback game. It could be, this could be a really quick game actually on the clock. But I think I'm maybe choosing to believe that the Falcons are going to win this game, as opposed to believing that they will. It's just because the highs are as high, and I think you want to see the stars shining, and I think Drake London has been lights out. And to Shane's point, I think some of Penix's passes to him have been so bad that you've had to see these athletic, these Moss type athletic catches, and because you want to be excited when you watch these games. I'm gonna will the Falcons to a win.
I was just checking the spreadsheet there and trying to remember which team I picked, and then I realized I hadn't actually picked a team in this one because I was completely on the fence on it. But I'm going to jump on the Carolina side. Brian?
Last chance to learn for the Falcons, I think, to get over the line on Sunday. It's the Falcons for me.
Right, we'll take a quick break.
Great odds, you're in control, you always bet responsibly, and you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet. Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. And with a 4-star Trustpilot customer service rating, why not give QuinnBet a shot? QuinnBet, we bet you love it.
To the NFC North we go, and to M&T Bank Stadium, where a crucial NFC North clash takes place this weekend as the Bears take on the Vikings. This one for me is the critical game of the Chicago Bears season for a couple of reasons. Firstly, at 6-3, they are now very much in the hunt for a playoff place in the most difficult division, or one of the most difficult divisions in the league right now. Getting over the line at 7-3, and bear in mind the Bears have a desperate record in the division, so this is a prove-it game for them. Would be a big morale boost and big momentum boost, and set straight one question mark that's been hanging over Chicago on their winning streak, where they've won 6 of 7 games, which is, have they actually beaten anybody worthwhile? I mean, Cowboys, the Raiders, the Commanders, the Bengals, the Saints, the Giants, the Raiders. There's no big game trophies on the Chicago wall yet. Ben Johnson has been winning plaudits for what he's done with the Chicago offense, and rightly so. It's a top 10 offense in the league, number 6 in scoring overall in the NFL. It's hard to argue with that. Defense has been up and down, but there have been definite signs of progress and real signs of what Caleb Williams can do well. And the running game has been a massive win for Chicago. You saw DeAndre Swift going off again for over 6 yards a carry last weekend in that win against the Giants, when a lot of other parts of the offense weren't firing on all cylinders. The Bears have found different ways to win. Equally, they've found different ways to put themselves in the hole in the fourth quarter. That has, though, shone a light on Caleb Williams' clutch ability. His accuracy for 3/4 of the game is suspect. He can make poor decisions, but he comes alive with the game on the line. That's the one thing you would want from your franchise quarterback, and that, is probably the most difficult thing to do. I've said before that Caleb Williams does the difficult things well and sometimes flounders on the easy things. To the Vikings, I still don't think we know what we've got in JJ McCarthy, and we haven't seen a huge amount of him. If it hadn't been, Brian, for that collapse by the Giants in Denver, we would have been looking at the Bears' collapse against the Vikings as one of the worst quarters of football of the season. Bears were looking to start.
Thanks.
Well, I spent a whole 12 months with Hail Mary references coming at me, so you're going to have to live with that one for a while, I'm afraid, my friend. They still don't know what they got in JJ McCarthy. They do know what they got in that blind Brian Flores defense. The Bears offensive line, the reimagined Bears offensive line, has done a really good job of keeping Caleb Williams clean. They've halved the sack rate from a year ago. Some of that is down to better offensive line play in front of him. Some of that is down to Caleb making better decisions, in fairness to him. A lot of the sacks last year weren't just on that O-line. They were on him bailing on clean pockets and choosing to scramble and show off his big play hunting, off-schedule ability rather than just playing what was in front of him. A lot of that has been cleaned up. And Caleb did get a look at the Brian Flores defense earlier on in the season, but that's critical for me. Can they continue to keep him clean? Can they get the run game going in the way they weren't doing in the early game of the season? If you look at where these two teams are now, based on where they were, and that was JJ McCarthy's first game under centre for the Vikings. He's obviously been injured for much of the season since then. The Bears didn't have a running game then. The Caleb Williams factor wasn't at the level that it is now. I think the Bears just have to win this one. I think it is the must-win game of the season because their schedule gets so much more difficult from here on in. And I don't know if I express full confidence in them because I still see a lot of flaws and I still see a lot of things that make me nervous from week to week. I don't think it's a healthy sign that you're barely stumbling over the line against some of the worst teams in the NFL, but they are getting the wins, and you got to give credit where credit's due. You are what your record says you are, to quote that old Bill Parcells cliche again. If they can move to 7-3, then we can take them a lot more seriously. They have to do so if they are serious about a playoff berth. Kieran.
Yeah, there's a good friend of mine. I remember when we were in school, if you came out of a test, any kind of an exam, you'd ask him how he got on, and he'd always say, "Geez, I pretty much got an A because I know exactly where I went wrong." And so that's the way he was. He felt he was being graded. And I think, like, if you look at the Vikings and what went wrong for them last week, it was between special teams and offense. They gave 3 short fields in allowing three turnovers, and those kind of things are quite fixable with a bit of coaching during the week. You can turn those kind of things around quite quickly. So, I mean, that's a good place to start for the Vikings this week. But they have allowed 24 plus points in four straight games, I think. And I completely agree with you. I think with the Vikings, we just don't know as much about where they are at the moment. The JJ McCarthy entity is still a bit unknown in terms of, we've seen fantastic courage, and we've seen unbelievable intangibles, but the numbers haven't jumped off the page, and you haven't seen consistency. And I know we've had the same complaint about Caleb Williams, but and the complaint has been at times that he's trying to play hero ball and he's trying to do too much. But last week, him playing hero ball and him doing exactly that in escaping the pocket and getting himself out of trouble probably was as much of a factor in them getting over the line as anything else. And I think the Bears get the win. I'd like to be wrong as a Packers fan because I'm actually more concerned about the Bears than the Vikings. I'd rather see the Vikings sneak this one. But I think the Bears have shown that level of consistency in getting the wins, even if they haven't been the cleanest wins of all time. A win is a win, as we always say. And there's just one element of the team I want to call out again, and I'm not one of these. I'm not going to claim to be one of any kind of a guru that pays too much attention to offensive line play or the nitty gritty of down in the trenches play. But twice in the 2 weeks in a row, I've just been in awe of some of the run blocking schemes that have been called for the Bears. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. And my pronunciation is it Dan Richard is the offensive line coach for the Bears. Just a couple of times they've been so in sync in opening up these holes and these misdirection plays. And like DeAndre Swift, I feel like I could run the ball in myself at times, the way that the sea has just parted for him. And, that's obviously a huge weapon in the run game.
You also wondered, to your point, Kieran, I think it's a point really well made. I was looking at some of the blocks that Colston Loveland put in last week. Seeing the way he blocks, I can see now why Ben Johnson wanted him over Tyler Warren. I think there was a whole package approach to that. I think he was very clear on what he wanted from Loveland, and he wanted that in the run game as well. And
as a receiving threat as well, he's backing. He's starting to heat up at the right time. And I know he got that walk-off touchdown 2 weeks ago, but he backed it up with a real consistent pass-catching performance. So again, a little bit of fear on my part in terms of what the Bears are starting to become and what they could become as the season progresses. So I give this one to the Bears.
Brian?
Conor, every year a team comes out of nowhere and we say it's a copycat league and you should model yourself on that particular team and how well they've done in the past. You should model yourself on the Vikings. That Vikings team that won all those close games a couple of years ago and got into the playoffs when everyone kept saying at some stage their luck was going to end. That's how it feels for me with this Bears team. I'm going for the Bears. And because I'm going to be in your company on Sunday night and you'll want the Giants to beat the Packers, I want the Bears to beat the Vikings. I think it's only fair. It's the Bears for me.
I think he froze Conor, did you?
He's in shock. He's in shock.
I know, yeah. Sorry, he froze that idea.
Are you back, Conor? Ah, here he is.
Hey, he's back.
Sorry, I'm back. I'm back in the room. 3,
Did
2,
you get
1, you're
that,
back in the
Connor?
room.
Did
I
you
was
get
only
that?
queuing you up, Shane. I literally only said Shane.
We thought you
I
collapsed.
I
We
felt
thought
the
you
love.
collapsed with the
I
shock.
really do feel the love.
No
Just
worries.
my internet went down with the shock of Ireland beating Portugal 2-0. That's
Oh.
what happened there.
Yep, that fellow Ronaldo is a cod. Anyway, just briefly.
There's only one cod, Shane, and he's here with us. Stop.
That's a nice initialisms joke. I will say very quickly, I don't think it's been pure luck that's been down to the Bears win. I've looked a lot into their offensive line play and so the grading that Kieran was referring to, that Arcod was referring to, and it's been superb. And I think that the Bears have what it takes to go and not only beat the Vikings, but bury them as they have to do to try and make sure that they stake their claim and knock the Vikings out of the NFC North race. And I think they can do it.
All right, Bucks at Bills. This has to look at one of the games of the weekend, Brian. Both teams coming off losses, slightly disappointingly so in the case of the Bucks, very much disappointingly so in the case of the Bills.
Yeah, I think both teams need to be concerned. Both teams that we spoke about going into the season with high hopes, and I'm not going to get away from it just yet. I think they're still well positioned to make a real run at it. But last week, in particular with the Bucks, early on, I had that feeling once the adverse weather kicked in, and it's going to kick in this weekend in terms of going into Buffalo. They couldn't stop the run game, and as you know, I continuously wax lyrical about the fact that the Bills just don't utilise Cook in the manner in which they should, because he, for me, is an absolute standout running back. If they get that run game going on Sunday, I think this Bucks team are in for a difficult day. We saw it last weekend. The Patriots ran on over them over the course of the game.
Is the only person who doesn't see James Cook's value, though, Joe Brady. Like, they just don't give him the ball. Like, it's ridiculous.
It's bananas. There's teams in the league crying out. And it's even going back a few years before that, Connor, because let's not go over the old Bills, but even when Dable was there, they had Singletary. Like, they just don't seem to be a run-heavy team. They don't want to be a run-heavy team, even when they've got the right players in place. They gave him the contract in the offseason. So you would think going into a new season, we spoke about that divisional game, we're getting away from the game itself, but we spoke about the championship game. And time again, you've called it out. Like, that particular drive at the end where they didn't give him the ball was bananas. He's such a fantastic player. For me, right now, you're asking me which team I'm more comfortable in terms of what they're going to do this season. It still is the Bills. Yeah, the Bills have a tendency to have these weird games. And in particular, it's obviously going to be against the Dolphins. Me and Shane were recording in the Arlington this weekend. They will have all the coverage on Sunday. And we spoke about the fact that the Dolphins ran them so close on that Thursday night game earlier on the season. They gave them a good beating last weekend. I'd imagine the Bills will come back and be seeding off that and will rebound well on Sunday. I think the Bucks might be in trouble, and I think the fact that the division is there's no one really pushing them in the division really doesn't help the situation. They need someone to be right up their backside in terms of giving them something to think about. They can lose this and still go on and win the division. But for the Bills, they can't, because they're not likely the Patriots are going to win on Thursday Night Football. So Bills for me.
Kieran, for me, the Bills are in, and I know you love a good old school quote. We've come too far. We got to keep our composure.
Yeah. But I have to agree with Brian, because I don't think. Yeah, I agree with what Brian said about the outlier games, that these crazy games. I mean, that absolute hammering they took from the Dolphins was just head scratching. While on the other hand, I think you'd say that the Bucks, it's been trending that way for the last few weeks, that they've cooled a little bit, and we were so full of praise for them in the early parts of the season. Funny, if you look at the box score of both of their games last week, and if you said how did the quarterbacks play, you'd say on paper not too bad. They racked up decent yards. They had multiple touchdown passes each. Egbuka was again on fire, 115 yards and a touchdown. But the fact of the matter is, Josh Allen kind of reverted to old Josh Allen in terms of that hero ball that we referred to in terms of Caleb Williams and trying to do too much, and you had his his drop ball or fumble, and you James Cook fumbling the ball. It was everything that could go wrong did go wrong for the Bills, and for the Bucks, I think it was more a case that they were steadily outplayed by the Patriots for 3/4 of the game, and then made a last ditch effort at a comeback and racked up a few if you want to call them garbage time, even though they were still kind of technically within reach of the Patriots. But I think Josh Allen has been more consistent than Baker, and Baker has cooled. But he, again, I totally agree with Brian that the Bills or the Bucks aren't in a aren't in any danger. I don't think that there's going to be any threat to them. I think they're going to be in the playoffs, and that'll stand to them. Whereas I think the Bills have to come back angry this week, and there is a reason that they don't give the ball to James Cook, is because he's my fantasy running back. So that's the only reason. I'm waiting. It's all about me. Get in there and make it about you. So I have the Bills as well. Same as Brian, for pretty much the exact same reasons. I've got the Bills coming back and avenging last week's loss.
Yeah, I kind of feel that the Bucs are coming into this one chippy, and they're a weird team because they can really throw punches in bunches. Like they're not going to play necessarily a complete 60-minute game on offense, but when they hit form, they're scarifying. I think I fancy the Bucs for a sneaky little upset win here. Shane?
I'm with you. I think the Buccaneers with a Buka back, they can beat Chippy. I think Mayfield might be warmed up properly after the bye week and go in with a bit of fire under his belly. I think the Bucs are going to win this one.
Texans Titans, don't take offense anyone, but to coin Bob Dylan's great line, you just kind of wasted all our precious time. Don't think twice. It's all right. We're just going to give our picks on this one. It's Texans here on the road for me. Brian?
Texans.
Kieran?
Yeah, Texans.
Shane?
Yeah, Houston winning the Oilers derby.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, good points. Right, into the 9 o'clock window where we have the Ravens taking on the Browns, and we're going to save a little bit of time here and just pick on this one as well. I'm going Baltimore. Brian?
Lamar Jackson in the last hour has practiced in full, which means he's good to go, and it's good enough for me. Right, the Ravens are Ravens.
Shane?
Yeah, Ravens for me.
Kieran?
Ravens, keep rolling.
All right, NFC West clash between the Niners and the Cardinals, two teams who were very disappointed in their performances last week and clearly beaten by their divisional rivals. The Rams putting the beat down on the Niners, and the Seahawks putting the Cardinals to the sword. One of these teams, however, will bounce back with a win. Shane, which one of them will it be?
Firstly, I don't think there's any major shame in either of these teams sort of losing by 40 or sort of conceding 40 points plus against the Rams and the Seahawks. Two teams who, as we'll talk about later, are just superb. The difference between this, though, is the fact that the 49ers got beaten by a team who were in superb offense, and the Cardinals just gave away and let themselves be, be trodden down upon. Initially, when I looked at this game, I was surprised that the 49ers were only 2.5-point favorites. But then I kind of remembered that they've got a pretty banged up defense. Their defense has given up over 24 points in each of the last 3 weeks. They have a lot of B-listers playing in there. That's just the nature of what Robert Saleh has to work with. No team has got fewer sacks in 2025 than the San Francisco 49ers. That's just the way that they've been playing. But their offense is still looking pretty sweet. I mean, let's not forget that Mac Jones had 150 plus rating in back-to-back games. He was over 300 yards with 3 touchdowns last week. George Kittle is on form. Everything that is getting thrown to him, he's catching, and that touchdown to the pylon was pretty tasty last week. I just think there's just a bit more form and a bit more flow going behind it, this 49ers team, than what we see in Arizona. In Arizona, I think they're having similar defensive issues, but it's schematically as well as just pure down to just talent being gone, which I think is a deeper set problem. You've got Jacoby Brissett playing back there, who's taken 5 or 6 sacks in every game that he's played for Arizona, and I think he's starting to regress to the mean a little bit after a good performance against the Dallas Cowboys, who, let's be fair, are a good defense to try and pick apart. That's just the way the Cowboys have been playing this year. He's still throwing for touchdowns. The fact he's getting sacked a lot isn't really hitting him too much, but the problem is, I think they're asking him to do too much, and he's just not capable of doing it. He had to attempt something like 44 passes last week. He only completed half of them. Their rush offense is not lighting up. Their rush defense is there for the taking. And if Christian McCaffrey can finally get back on form properly, like we know he can, then I think this is the game for them to do it. So I think the 49ers are in for a comfortable enough win here, more comfortable than the spread suggests.
Yeah, I think you set it up brilliantly there, and you've outlined all the key points, Shane. Like, fair play to you, you kind of killed it. But the key one for me is, as you said there, that from a Cardinals perspective, it sounds a bizarre thing to say given the final result against the Seahawks, but apart from all the turnovers and getting monstered by the Seahawks defense for large parts of the game, offensively they didn't actually play all that badly. Like, when they got it going, they have the playmakers there. As you said, Brissett was hassled way too much, and The question in this game for me from a 49ers perspective is, can they keep the pressure up on him? Because the 49ers have fewer sacks than any other team in the league right now. They're massively missing Bosa and and Warner and their key defensive contributors. Like Robert Saleh has been absolutely, loaves and fishes on that side of the ball. With Mac Jones has held up reasonably well. And as you say, Shane, he's getting back some of his key components. George Kittle makes a huge difference to what they can do. They may have Brock Purdy back this weekend. Getting Christian McCaffrey going on the ground remains a conundrum for them to solve. I think he's averaging fewer than 3 yards per carry, which is just not Christian McCaffrey. And that's obviously not all on Christian McCaffrey either by any manner of means. They've got to make the holes for him. In the receiving game, obviously, he's been their number one threat, and he's had to carry a massive load, and he'll pick up yards after the catch when they give him the ball on those short and intermediate routes. So he's still a massive threat, and the offense still revolves around him. We're looking on the other side of the ball and thinking, like, why isn't Marvin Harrison more involved for the Cardinals? The huge load on Trey McBride, and he's doing his manful best to carry that load for them. DeMercado has slotted in manfully for James Conner as well in the running game, but it's just been way too much for them at way too often this season. And I think with the 49ers getting their players back, you would trust them on the road to avenge their defeat of last week and get back to winning ways. It means more for them ultimately. They've more on the line. They need to go in there and win, and I think they will do so. Brian.
One sneaky one that's kind of floating under the radar this week is Jonathan Gannon. We're talking about a week in which we're talking about so many head coach potentially being on the hot seat. It seems to be one that's coming more and more to the fore, that he is under a lot of pressure there. I don't think it's going to get any better this weekend. I have the 49ers winning.
Kieran?
Yeah, just like Shane, Ben was saying, he wants Jonathan Gannon to stay in situ because that'll suit the Seahawks. I think so. Certain teams are a step too far for the 49ers. They've been doing so well with what they have, but I don't think the Cardinals are one of those teams. I think the 49ers are good enough to beat them.
All right, quick timeout before we do what Will Smith said and roll into the Wild Wild West.
Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. QuinnBet, we bet you love it. You know great odds, you're in control, you always bet responsibly, and you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet. Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. And with a 4-star Trustpilot customer service rating, why not give QuinnBet a shot? QuinnBet, we bet you love it.
The segment brought to you by the Arlington Hotel. Another Sunday evening of live games and Red Zone, of course, in the Arlington on Bachelor's Walk in Dublin. Thanksgiving coming up on the 27th, Thursday the 27th. You can join some of us in the Arlington on the night for the big Thursday evening of football and food at the Arlington Hotel. The AFC West clash between the Chiefs and the Broncos is one of the games, if not the game of Week 11. Chiefs coming in off a disappointing loss for them, coming off a bye, you expect big things of Andy Reid, and you expect big things of this offense in particular. Patrick Mahomes under huge duress against the Bills and has not been able to produce with defenders in his face. They've had huge problems on their O-line. Both tackles have been absolute revolving doors as far as opposing teams' pass rushers are concerned. That's something that simply is not designed to deal with what they're facing on the other side of the ball. The Broncos are on course for a record pace. They're about to break the 1984 Chicago Bears record if they keep going the way they're going. They're already having rounded the halfway mark of the season at 40 sacks, which puts them 3 ahead of where that monstrous unit were back in the 1980s. Benito, Cooper and the boys have been absolutely lethal at getting to opposing teams' quarterbacks, and that just cannot happen this weekend. Bill Barnwell did a really interesting article on ESPN during the week, tiering teams in terms of their actual Super Bowl ambitions. And he had the Chiefs in the category of contenders, provided they make the playoffs, which seems like a kind of slightly paradoxical thing to say. But I think it says everything about where the Chiefs are. I mean, it's hard not to back them in any given clash, and particularly when the stakes are high. You just look at the track record they have, and you look at the CV they have, and you look at the playmakers they have, and you look at what they've been able to do at times. Probably the Lions game, their outstanding win so far this season. You think, yeah, it's all still there. The magic is still there. And yet you're looking at their record going, it's not a raging certainty that they're going to even make the playoffs. And this division, with the Broncos having, riding a 7-game winning streak, with the Chargers hot on their tails, and the Chargers already with the head-to-head advantage over the Chiefs, unless the Chiefs can get them back in that return match, is not easy, and it's not getting any easier. Set against that, the Broncos, despite their record and despite the scarifying things that they can do defensively, they're on the verge of fraudulent behavior. Like, you look at that record and you look at how, and they're such a weird team, because they could arguably be unbeaten. It wouldn't be shocking if they were at 10-0 at this point, because the 2 games they've lost are 2 games they probably could have won. And that you can pick out any number of games where they've just fallen over the line and think, boy, they were so lucky there. That, we won't mention that one particular game, Brian, but there's been 2 or 3 others this season where you're looking at them going, they really struggled against poor teams. Depending on which Broncos show up, and depending on what Spagnuolo and Reid have cooked up off the bye, and is there anyone that you trust more off a bye week than Andy Reid? I think this could be a bit of a comeuppance for Denver. In fact, I think it will be a bit of a comeuppance for Denver, and I think the Chiefs will be riding high on their way out of Mile High. Brian?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that what Broncos we're going to get on Sunday. I think we're going to get the Broncos we've been getting all season, which is a team that offensively can do it in sports. They make some big plays. The Courtland Sutton is ineffective for large parts of most games. And then, like 2 weeks ago against the Texans, he comes up with 1 or 2 big plays. Franklin last week, it comes up with the play that essentially gets them over the line. Obviously, a field goal thereafter is the ultimate final score that wins that game. But I totally understand where you're coming from. There's inconsistency in their play. Shouldn't have beaten the Giants. Arguably shouldn't have beaten Texans. Probably shouldn't have won last weekend. And yet, Sean Payton has been here before. Sean Payton knows how to navigate these victories. And right now, he's navigating a team, with all due respect, that has a quarterback that's really ineffective over the course of the season. He's not playing at the level in which we saw last year. I don't know, it's a second-year slump. And it's probably not talked about enough in the grand scheme of things, because where they are, you touched on there, like, you could flip it and they could be unbeaten. I think it's a balanced record of where they are in terms of the season. And defensively, they're absolute marquee. And this Chiefs team, for me, I've now moved into another stage where, when you're doing selections in the past, you'd say, okay, I like that team, but I just know ultimately the Chiefs will find a way to get the victory over them. That would have been me a couple of years ago, 2 weeks ago, when they played against the Bills, but I knew ultimately the Bills would find a way. And I think it's the same situation on Sunday. I think going into Mile High, despite them coming off a bye, they're not at the level in which they played in the past. They're even not at the level in which the teams that have made their way into the Super Bowl. And I totally get the prizes at stake if they make the playoffs. And then look, everyone wants them out the door because they just don't want to deal with them come the playoff time. But I just don't think it's going to be this year. And despite my selection at the start of the season, I think the Broncos get a big win on Sunday, and ultimately this leads to them not winning the division for the first time in a long time. The playoffs will be very much a wild card, and then it'll be between the Broncos and the Chargers who wins the division. It's a low scoring, tight game, and ultimately again the Broncos come out on the right side, but maybe a late field goal.
Oh, when you hit us up with rolling into Mile High off a bye, I thought you were going to freestyle it there for a second. I was getting all excited. It was all Eminem 8 Mile for a moment there. Oh, where's he going to go next? We get you next time, Brian, and we know you can drop bars with the best of them. Shane?
Brian dropping bars is a segment we have to start. We have to start canonizing. that would just
I've dropped off many a bar in my last 20 years.
Listen, the only thing I will say is my hottest take, which could potentially be my coldest take, is that this Broncos team are frauds, and that therefore I am expecting the Chiefs to come in and be the fraud busters. But I just think that actually this might be a close game the Chiefs will win, because simply they have to. They are still the bookie Super Bowl champion favorites for a reason, because when they have to find a way to play good football, they'll play good football. I did say that 2 weeks ago against Buffalo, but this time they really have to, and I think they really will.
Kieran O'Donovan, are they cod or God? Is it Chiefs or Broncos?
I'm the same as Brian. I have a sneaking suspicion that the Broncos get a big win here, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts. If you were the Chargers, what are you hoping for this weekend? If you can get the win, are you looking forward at the Broncos to see, can you try and catch them? Or are you looking behind you and saying, God, it'd be handy if the Chiefs lost from here?
I think that's a really good question. I think if you're Harbaugh, you want your team thinking we can win the division. Their cleanest path to the playoffs is win the division, let the Broncos lose, and we'll take care of business against the Chiefs.
I would agree with that.
Fair point.
Now, Seahawks Rams. It's an all NFC West weekend. We covered the 49ers Cardinals a bit earlier. The Rams at home, 2.5-point favorites in SoFi. Shane.
This is the battle between the two best teams in the NFL right now. And thankfully, because somebody in the NFL had the great wisdom to put the Cowboys and Raiders on Monday Night Football, we're able to watch this at a watchable hour here in Ireland. And that it is the beautiful thing. I found this game very, very difficult to try and call leading up to it because it's just very difficult to try and pick out what the weakness in either of these teams is going to be that's going to actually be exposed.
Had you lost your coin down the side of the couch at that
point? At this point, it was all gone. You know, it was no coins, no rabbit's foot, no spinning wheels, nothing for luck. I have to actually look into numbers in this one. And if you look at the numbers, actually, you're looking at a Rams team who are second in overall defense, second in run defense, second in PFF tackling grade, third in PFF coverage grade, pretty high in the pass rush, against a Seahawks team who are overall the best team in football if you look at the DVOAs, fourth best offense, third best defense, second best special teams, best passing offense in the league, one of the best passing defenses and rushing defenses in the league. Their only weakness really is their rushing offense, which is in the bottom third of the league in terms of many key statistical areas. So you're looking at this one and you're just trying to figure out where's the game changer, what's the key. And just as high as I've been on this Seahawks team and as high as I've been on Sam Darnold's ability, as much as Jackson Smith-Njigba can really be explosive at times when the Seahawks maybe necessarily haven't been playing the best type of football as they did. I can't remember the primetime game a couple of weeks ago when they were outplayed with Jackson Smith-Njigba played superb football. But you're going up against...
On the road against the Commanders, that one was.
Yes, thank you. But you're going up against the LA Rams and Matt Stafford, who are just playing champagne football right now. I mentioned this stats before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. Matt Stafford right now, since week 4, has thrown for 20 touchdowns and no interceptions, which is by miles ahead of anybody else in the league right now. He's got Puka Nacua coming back in the full fitness. He still has the rest of his squad sort of, fit and healthy. I think schematically they've had the better of the Seahawks for a reason. Stafford has never lost to the Seahawks for as long as it's been an LA Ram. I know this is probably the toughest challenge he's had to face, and this is in Los Angeles, which again not the toughest place to go, but there is still a home element to it. I'm really looking forward to watching this game play. I think there's a potential to actually have a lot of scoring, despite the fact that both of these defenses are tough. Both of these defenses are really good up front. Both of these defenses will get to the quarterback a lot. I think Sam Darnold is probably going to be under a different kind of pressure than he's faced so far this season. So that will test his ability because, is he gonna cave like he did against the Rams when he was playing for the Vikings in the playoffs recently enough? Is that the same kind of scheme they're going to try and really put him in the sort of blender? I'm not quite sure, but I'm leaning that direction at the moment. But it's been a very difficult one to call because both of these teams have been playing so good in every aspect of the game, and there's no real weaknesses for them to find. But I just think that because the Seahawks will end up relying too much on that connection between Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith-Njigba, that's too easy for the Rams to try and decode, as opposed to what they can do broadly on their offensive defense, and that might just give them the edge here.
Kieran, as Shane was saying, it's a really difficult one to pick, and it's one of those ones where it would be easy to lean on home field advantage if it wasn't that they're hosting the best away team in football.
Yeah, it's like an episode of Countdown here. When you go second and you have to show your notes to prove that you did you basically did the exact same thing. I was splitting hairs as well, like Shane, trying to find a difference or trying to find something that you could hang your hat on to say that there is a difference between these two teams. On one hand, you've got Darnold, the second highest passer rating in the league. On the other hand, you've got the front runner for the MVP in Matthew Stafford. He's four plus touchdowns and no interceptions in the last 3 games straight. I mean, that's an unbelievable statistic. It's probably the hottest offense in football at the moment. You've got Devontae Adams, who flourished in the absence of Puka Nacua, and 2 receivers who I think Devontae is not a guy who he's not at a stage in his career where he's going to demand to be the shining light on the team. And I think Puka Nacua has proven that he's a team first guy. So these two guys are going to gel well. And on the other side, with the Seahawks, you've got Raheed Shaheed, who, to be fair, I mean, he didn't do much last week, but he's still betting into that offense, and we've yet to see what he can do. So like two very similarly matched defenses as well. The one difference I'm going to give, and while we did the same working out, Shane, we got a different answer. So one of us is going to be right, one of us is going to be wrong. I'm giving it to the Seahawks, and the reason I'm giving it is that ground game that we've talked about opening up for all season. That that the potential that they had under Clint Kubiak kind of came to fruition in the last couple of weeks, and 198 yards on the ground. Maybe there's a new Sonic and Knuckles here in Charbonnet and Walker. And what they showed that they can do, I think that just might be the difference. They might have that strength in the run game. And again, you said it, Connor. It's the away record that almost frightens you. It's almost like a away field advantage for the Seahawks at the moment. So I'm going to give the edge to the Seahawks. But again, look, it is. I'll take Shane's coin and flip it as well. It could go either way.
Yeah, very much torn on this one. I hate to back against the Seahawks. I'm a big believer in them, and everything that both of you have outlined there gives me huge confidence that they're going to show up in a big way on the road. But just edging the Rams for me, given, as you've been saying, how well Matthew Stafford has been playing. If I have to pick a coach and quarterback duo out of this one, it's McVay and Stafford over McDonald and Darnold, but not by much. And I'm really looking forward to watching the Seahawks, to continuing watching the Seahawks progress as the season goes on. Brian?
Hard to believe last February the Rams were even openly considering trading Matthew Stafford, and he was all a game and applied to get him back. He stayed for days like Sunday for big games like this in the West, and for me, it's a Rams victory.
Can I just make just a quick point that I forgot to mention as well? How much of a factor is Cooper Kupp going to be in the coach's room this week? Like, we all know how much of a football brain that he possesses, and he's almost like a coach on the field. How much of an inside track is he going to give those coaches this week, and potentially give the edge to the Seahawks as well? That could very well be the difference.
Yeah, good stuff. It's Lions Eagles next. There's so many good games, and then we have Monday Night Football and Cowboys Raiders. Shane, as you were saying, well done, schedulers. They get so much right, but that's really, talk about peak end bias. That's just the opposite of peak end bias. But look, we've got Lions Eagles and Sunday Night Football. In the meantime, we talked about maybe Eagles-Packers being an NFC Championship game preview last weekend. This might be another one of rehearsal, depending on what way the season goes for both of these teams, as the Lions travel to the Link to play the Eagles, who are 1.5 point favourites. So the bookies really not seeing much between these two teams either. I'm a long-term believer in the Lions, and they were the other team that's in Bill Barnwell's category in that ESPN article we referenced earlier, which is threats and contenders, provided they can make the playoffs. I think the Lions, to me, are redolent of the Meath football team in 2001. I remember hearing you remember that there was the Meath-Kerry semi-final in 2001 where Meath absolutely ambushed Kerry through the back door and ended up going through to the All-Ireland final against Galway, which they subsequently lost. But they produced just a spectacular performance against Kerry in the semi-final. I remember Anthony Moyles being interviewed years after the event, and he was saying it's a Meath team that had a couple of All-Irelands won, full of players who were used to playing in the big games at Croker in these big matches, and they were dumped out of the Leinster Championship, had to go through the back door, and they struggled to get over the line against teams that they thought they were much better than, because he said, look, it's hard to get going and to get your dander up for these games when you're used to playing in the big clashes. I think the Lions are suffering just a bit of a hangover from the last couple of seasons where they've been on, the surge of huge momentum, huge passion in their home city, winning their first playoff game in years, and coming into the season as one of the favourites to win the Super Bowl last year, and that massive letdown when the Commanders just completely upended them in the divisional round, and they're one and done, and they go home in the playoffs despite having come in as the number one seed. I trust the Lions over the course of a season. I don't, however, trust the Lions to win this particular game. The Eagles, kind of like where they were last season, although not to the same degree. We're kind of looking at them week to week going, is the whole really greater than the sum of the parts? I'm not so sure. What's their identity? Is AJ Brown falling out with Nick Sirianni? Is there grumbling going on? Are they slowly pulling themselves apart at the seams? And yet, we say again and again, you look at the players that they have and you look at the players that they added at the trade deadline. The Lions are one of those teams that I was wondering, should they not have made a couple of moves? Like, given how banged up they are on their O-line, they've got a couple of key defensive contributors this weekend who might be out as well. Terry and Arnold not looking like he's going to be able to go. Kirby Joseph, the savior, the safety rather, also banged up. They're starting to show worrying signs of where they were heading into the end game last year, where they just had too many of their key men down for those bigger games when they really needed them most. That never happens to the Eagles because of the depth that they have and because of the clever moves that their front office makes in the moments where they need to. Adding Jalen Phillips, as Howie Roseman managed to do, was a very smart and very important move. I think it's going to be as the season draws to a close, as the regular season draws to a close. I just trust the Eagles more at home in this spot where the two teams are right now. Roll this one forward to an NFC Championship game, maybe it's a very different story. And I am a believer in the Lions. I had picked them to make the Super Bowl, and I'm not wavering from that one yet. I think they're going to take a roundabout route, and it's going to make for a very good America's game. And I think this is going to be the one that gives them the chip on the shoulder, that maybe they come back to the link in the snow and do something special in the postseason. Hold that thought, but they're not going to win this weekend for me.
Yeah, and I look at this one as well, and I weirdly, instinctively, I almost have the opposite feeling to you, in that I trust the Eagles to win in the playoffs more, and the Lions to try and sort of get over this type of matchup, because we've seen the Lions capitulate in the playoffs and the Eagles win a Super Bowl. But I completely understand where you're coming from. In terms of this particular matchup for me, I think it's
having shot all over your point. I at least understand where you're coming from.
No, I just. You've explained it far better than I explained my counterpoint. Mine is merely a good feeling on it, just based on, like, I guess still reeling in the Lions messing up that NFC Championship game 2 years ago. But I think if you just also, by the way, fantastic GA reference, by the way, my Picasso references can't keep up with that. That's just, that's when you're quoting like the Meade in 2001 Leinster Championship, that's the key references we need. Getting back on track though, in terms of this particular
I'll be old, Shane.
Well, yeah, exactly. I was 2 years old when that happened. Just on the matchup, though, right? I mean, the Eagles have a lot of players fit. They're not dealing with as many injury problems, particularly on defense. And their defense has this great ability to not only lock things down, but to completely take the life out of the game, as it did against the Packers last week. That's just kind of what they do, if given the chance. Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell are in pretty good form, and I think they'll have a good say in trying to keep Amon-Ra St. Brown quiet. I'm backing the Lions to win this one, because I just feel like this is the kind of game that Dan Campbell, who's back on play calling duties now, is trying to. He wants to bring his more swashbuckling style back. There's going to be something in there where there's a fake punt, or going for it on fourth down, or Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think has a really amazing game under the likes of Sunday Night Football, or something of that ilk. I mean, you have to remember as well that the Eagles aren't under the same level of pressure to try and top their division.
Big Dom gets ejected. There's a black cat on the field.
Yeah, it all could happen. Like, it could end up like snowing and raining in the middle. You have Philly cheesesteaks flying through the air. You never know what's going to happen in this particular game. I mean, I had to laugh at Chris Sims referring to this week that these are the two ball clubs that for years, if there was a bar fight, these will always be the two last teams standing. That's just the nature of both of these teams. But I just think that with the running game that they have established so well, and I don't think the run defense has been stellar for the Eagles in the way that their pass defense has been. I think that Gibbs and Montgomery, particularly Gibbs, can have a good day here. I'm still yet to see Saquon Barkley break out to have the same kind of season as he has last year, and I think the Lions defense might be able to keep him quiet enough. Am I convinced with the pick that the Lions are going to win this? No, I think there's definitely a lot of different worlds happening here, and the Eagles defense, I think, will have the biggest day as this game goes. But I just think there's something, there's a bit of prime time coming from the Lions here that I think actually could end up working. And who knows, God forbid, somebody might actually referee the tush push right, and that actually might slow the Eagles down. Considering this game is on Sunday Night Football, which is the most watched television event every week in America, I have a funny feeling there's been a lot of talk in NFL in New York, trying to make sure that play is at least called in some way right, because they've gotten away with so many offsides in the last couple of weeks. And I think that actually might knock a bit of the rhythm off as well if something like that just manages to hit the Eagles, if they get a couple of bad calls, and that affects their discipline as well. So for that reason, I'm back in the line.
Yes, got away with more offsides than Richie McCaw. Brian, who emerges from the NFL's barroom brawl with their teeth intact?
Yeah, it's the Eagles for me. I think Saquon has a big game on Sunday, and primetime Saquon shows up. Sirianni will kick field goals as opposed to Dan Campbell at crucial times in the game. For that reason, I'll go with the Eagles. Quick, Todd Brady there. Sorry, he's asked a quick question around who's staying up. Shane, you're staying up. I think we're all on the Pats tonight. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, Connor.
Pats pals. Kieran?
Yeah, if you believe what Mike Florio was saying this week, the refs are going to continue to ignore the offside calls because he floated a theory that because the safety was a factor in trying to get the push ban last year, but they had no data to back it up, that they're trying to create the data this year by missing so many offside calls that when it goes back to a vote next year, they'll have a lot more data to back up the proposal. So that's it. There's your conspiracy theory of the week. But I'm giving this to the Eagles. They're the Chiefs, this year's regular season Chiefs, and that they're winning games that they shouldn't win. So I'm going to give it to them.
Brian, Monday Night Football sees the Gambler and his team travel to the city of gamblers as the Cowboys take on the Raiders.
Yeah, an exciting one to finish out the week, Connor. Yeah, I just should have went into the quick picks with all due respect.
Remember the Badil and Skinner fantasy football from years ago? That'll be a good game.
I tell you, we're going to go to Phoenix to the Flames, because this is the type of Phoenix of the Flames, because we haven't seen the Raiders do a lot over the last 20 years, and the Cowboys keep finding ways not to have big seasons. And when they do have good seasons, they find ways to blow it in the playoffs. Look, for this particular game, the Raiders have played tough, in particular at home against teams, but yet they find ways to lose. Lost tight to the Bears, ended in overtime against the Jags. It strikes me as that type of game. I think the Cowboys ultimately will find a way to get this over the line. Dak Prescott, despite the difficult season they're having, has had one of his better seasons, but it's probably not going to be reflected on at the end of the season because of the struggles of the team, and defensively it's been a huge struggle. And I think your former head coach probably won't be there for too long if things continue the way they are, but I don't think the Raiders have enough on offense to expose this defense on Monday night, so I'll go with the Cowboys to get a nice victory.
Kieran?
Yeah, the Cowboys' offense is built to score fast, and the Raiders' offense is just built to go as Brock Bowers goes, and that's not going to win it. That's not going to get you points quick enough. I agree with Connor. I think the Cowboys have enough firepower. And interesting to see if Quinn Williams as well will make much of a difference in terms of the sack productivity. I know he has no sacks on the season, but he has been a productive pass rusher in the past. So give it to the Cowboys.
Shane, I think the natural, actual, real, authentic Arkansas-loving man goes home happy as the Cowboys take the W. How do you see it?
Johnny Cash references to finish off the night. What better way is it to do it? It's funny because in terms of trying to pick what game should be on primetime, this should be relegated to the Ring of Fire. But thankfully, we don't have to stay up to all night to watch this one, and I certainly won't. But I think the Cowboys will win by the time I wake up on Tuesday morning.
We're back with our Instant Reaction podcast on Monday morning. Craig joins Kieran to discuss the immediate storylines from Week 11 from all those games. We'll be back on Monday live at 9 to get into all the details. Stay with us until then.